Hello, welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So we're on to Zendikar. This brings back memories. But before we do that, I just wanted to use the opportunity to just update everybody about some things that might be going on with the channel. So anybody out there that views these also may have ever posted to YouTube and has a functioning YouTube channel might remember that a little while ago there was an email went around from YouTube just giving everybody a heads up that even those websites which were not monetized, which this up till now hasn't been monetized, my channel hasn't been monetized, but YouTube would start posting advertising anyway, just randomly, I think. So I'd sort of left it, run really. And not really done much about it. And then in the process of me thinking about getting another channel off the ground, which I've been thinking about for a while, so I will be doing a second channel, which I did mention once before, I think, which is more to do with training and advice, nothing to do with Magic the Gathering, but more to do with my career. Or various career paths that I've taken and the sort of things that I'd, have learnt, particularly around the area of lifelong learning, which is something I've been involved with a lot over the years. So yeah, that's a separate channel that I'm in the process of starting to post to. But in the lead into that, I'd been thinking about, how I would deal with just these random ads that come up on my current, Toxic Music 79 channel. And I figured the best way to deal with that is to actually monetize the channel. And then that way I can decide what videos, particularly in the case of the relaxation videos that I've posted in the past, that I don't want to monetize. So I want a way of just making sure ads don't appear on that. And then with the remaining ones, I could, if I felt so inclined, draw down something from here. My original plan way back and from the videos I mentioned in the past was sort of never to monetize the channel. But my sort of hand's been forced a little bit, I suppose you could say, and it's made me think about it again. So I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm on about third stage of the monetization process. But once that does, you might notice that the way the advertising appears is much more uniform, as opposed to, I'm assuming it's pretty random at the moment. I have noticed, I generally don't watch my own videos, but I do occasionally just check them, and I noticed in checking ads were definitely popping up going in, and it would be nice to control that. And particularly there's one or two non-Magic the Gathering videos on the channel which ironically have got a lot of views over the years, and I wouldn't mind having the option, obviously, with those sort of videos, if I post anything like that or the existing ones, and I know they might get a lot of views, is to be able to actually monetize them in some way. So that, just in case anybody wondered why advertising had already appeared, it's because of a change in YouTube policy, and then going forward I'm just going to go with the flow and just monetize the channel, but obviously make sure advertising doesn't turn up on any of the relaxation style ones. I know it's a bit problematic anyway on my channel because there's a sort of unintentional ASMR element on the channel as well. So I know some people just use the videos generally for relaxation, and I'll try and be mindful of that, obviously, as to where, when I do switch it on a video, where I put the advertising, so it doesn't interfere too much with the flow in that respect. But I just thought I'd give you a heads up, everybody, because there'll be one or two other changes off the back of that, in that I may well introduce slightly more uniform thumbnails. I've noticed again something weird in YouTube is cropping a lot of the card artwork that I use. and I don't seem to have a way of controlling that. So I figured if I went over to properly design thumbnails, which I'm just going to create, that might, that'll get rid of that. But also the other thing is I might decide to slightly change my avatar, and that really is just as a consequence as if I start formally monetizing the channel. You'll notice my avatar is Totoro, so I don't think it would happen, but I just don't want to run into any problems by using effectively like a trademarked image or whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to think of the other word for that. It's gone for the moment, but yeah, intellectual property. So yeah, I'm just going to be mindful of any IP related stuff and adjust accordingly as a consequence of that. So I just thought I'd let everybody know, and then I'll post a video when I get around to hopefully launching my second channel, which I've been threatening I think for a year now, when I posted about it way back, but it never really materialized, and I've opened up a little bit of time in my schedule as I've put another project on the back burner to be able to hopefully do that. And I'll let everybody know exactly what sort of things to expect on that channel, so you know whether it's something you're going to like or not. So back to the job in hand, back to the task in hand. So we've got Zendikar here. Yeah, 269 cards in the set, and this was released on October the 2nd, 2009. So I was still in the UK at that point. Actually, that was probably around the time that my visa, my landing visa came through, because I left the UK in December, and I spent the whole November where I sort of shut my business down over there and just hung out with my family in the UK for about a month without any distractions. So yeah, so October was around the time that I actually got my my visa to come to Nova Scotia, initially as a permanent resident, and then ultimately I ended up with citizenship about 4 years later. So yeah, so interesting time. I was trying to think, actually, the first set that I bought once I arrived in Nova Scotia. What I actually bought, I probably either World Wake or Rise of the Eldrassi, one of the two. Because I think prior to that, the first thing I'd bought previous to that was obviously 10th edition, which I've said many times on videos. But Zendikar, I retrospectively started buying packs once I'd started buying World Wake and Rise, and then of course the one we did the previous week, M10 as well, which is, as I've said, different than 10th edition. And of course with now we're talking about core sets for a moment. We're up to an era where we're at this point we're going to be doing core sets every year, or that's when Wizards were releasing them. So obviously when I'm doing my set musings, it's going to be core set block like that. I'm going to skip over like supplemental sets. I think I'm going to go through with what I would call the main sets that were released, and then I might fill in here and there. And obviously any new sets that come out, I'll cover those in between. So with the Zendikar, we've got 249 cards, 101 commons, 60 uncommons, 53 rares, 15 mythic rares, 20 basic lands. The themes were lands. There's a lot of non-basic lands in the set, actually. We had quests, traps, keywords, ability words to look out for are things like Landfall and Kicker, which ties in very nicely with the general lands theme. The other thing, which is difficult for me to illustrate because it was super random, was something called Priceless Treasures. It was a promotion to further the theme of the set, where Wizards randomly inserted cards from older sets into Zendikar boosters, replacing the basic land slot. And those cards were mostly from Beta, Unlimited and Antiquities. Some of them were signed. Cards from the reserve list are not excluded as those cards because they're not reprints. They were actually existing copies that they'd pulled out of storage from somewhere, from the old print run, so they don't violate the policy. But they deliberately didn't include anti-related cards in there. So it was quite possible, very, very, I mean, I don't know what the statistically the chance of pulling a Priceless Treasure were. And how it was found out is when, I believe, someone was opening packs. That's when they got these, this old card, I think. And Wizards sort of confessed to the fact that, yeah, they'd done this. So there was Power 9 in there, or Power 9 members, dual lands, cards that weren't on the reserve list but weren't reprinted, like things like Soul Ring. They were excluded in limited play, so you couldn't use them, I understand, if you pulled them. And that by having it in the basic land slot, which was a thing by this point in Magic, having basic land slot, they weren't taking away from the cards you would have got anyway, apart from a basic land. 16 card booster packs. 6 card boosters had been a thing for quite a while, actually. I've not really mentioned them up till now, but yeah, 6 card boosters are a thing. They got 5 intro packs in the set. And then what went on to become referred to as the bundle as well. So back then there were fat packs. I'm not sure what the contents was at that point. It might have been 8 boosters in there. So we had 3 new Planeswalkers as well, which we'll see. And a creature type of ally as well. So I'll just scroll through this. And I'm sure, like me, when you scroll through this set, if you remember this set, it just brings a smile to your face. I remember playing retrospectively this. I drafted this online a few times, but when it came round as that sort of year of Modern, that they did quite a few years ago now, actually, and it was a fast set to draft, like to play, really fast. So yeah, you had to be pretty mindful. There were some strategies it was difficult to pull off, because it was just so fast, and if your opponent had happened to have drafted a really fast archetype, then it was really difficult to get back. It's Vampire Hexmage. Nice way of dealing with Planeswalkers. And we will take a look at the Planeswalkers in the set. There's Beastmaster Ascension in here. And we'll talk a little bit about Mythics as well, because of course Mythics had become a thing, as we saw in M10. So we're into the age of now fully into the age of the mythic rare. Remember this one? And the other thing is, there were sort of references here to Eldrassi as well. So we're getting like a bit of a teaser, I suppose, as to what's coming up Yeah, what's at the end of the set? As you'll see these like hedrons as well featured in the artwork. Oh, the other thing, of course, we'll be taking a look at the full art. Yeah, full art land was a thing. And I think apart from the unsets, that's the first time they've done full art land in a regular set that I'm aware of, beyond those unsets. Okay, so let's see how I've sliced and diced this, because I always do it slightly different every week just to keep things interesting. So what I thought I'd start doing is just showing the reprints, because it's become more interesting as a result of the modern core sets. But I think I'd do it with the non-core sets as well. So there's a relatively easy way to do this in Scryfall, which hadn't been straight away aware of, which is probably why I didn't do it sooner. And that is this is reprint. I've obviously taken out the basics in here as well. So 9 reprints in the set. So I suppose the one that I recognise most, or would have, tend to recognise most, is Cancel. Out of all of these, I think. And then this is all the remainder. This is all the not reprinted stuff. So the new stuff at that time, obviously subsequently it's been reprinted. Again, netting off the basics. So 220 cards, including non-basic lands in here. So there are non-basic lands in here. And I just wanted to show you here. Again, I've netted out the basic lands, but there were actually 20 non-basic lands in this set of various rarities. So that's quite a lot for a set generally. I think we've seen sets close to that, but nothing, probably to this degree. And we'll go through those in a moment, because you can see already that it's probably become obvious that there are cycles here, and there's some fancy dual lands. So going through some of the themes, the mechanics, the keywords, the abilities. We had quests in the set. So you can see here they do mention quest counters. And not surprisingly, for that to work, they would all need permanents. And in fact, they're all enchantments here. They're all enchantments. And there's cycles within this, which I will go through at various rarities. But I just wanted to give you a top-down view of the set. Then there's some traps again. Some cycles in here. And you can see they were on a particular... the subtype of trap was on a particular type of card. It was on an instant. There is one sorcery that does mention trap cards. Landfall. So with Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on Sunspring Expedition. So you can see Landfall was triggered whenever a land entered the battlefield, and then what happened as a result was different based on the card. So there were 26 of those. Did I mention there were 16 trap cards and 15 quest cards? So 26 landfall across multiple colours and also on artifacts. But and you can see here we've got a combination of both landfall and quest counters. And with this one you can see the quest counters, basically at some point you're redeeming those quest counters. Kicker. Now that obviously came back. We just had regular kicker here. We'll get to talk about multi-kicker in a future video. And kicker was originally printed in Invasion, but there was a variation of this called multi-kicker. And they got a functional reprint, I think, in Innistrad Midnight Haunts. And we'll see multi-kicker in World Weight, basically. That's when we see that. So yeah, keep your eyes out for kicker and said variants. So with this, basically what happens is you get a chance to pay an additional cost in addition to the CMC, and as a result you get an additional effect if you kick it. Some effects larger than others. No kicker on artifacts though. There's 25 of these. I mentioned about ally being a thing, being a new subtype of creature, and they were across all the colours, including an artifact, and there were 19 of those. And the logic behind having this is you could have this thing where whenever Cabiria, Evangel or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may choose a colour. If you do, allies you control gain protection from the chosen colour. And there is a link to this between allies and slivers, which we brought up in a separate episode, in as much as with slivers, prior to the original slivers, if you like, that came out, they were always symmetrical effects, so it applied to all slivers on the board. Allies come along and this is an asymmetric effect. So you can see, unless otherwise stated, it does say under your control. But then what happened was there was a later set where I believe, so the story goes, they wanted to use allies. Originally it was going to be allies, and then at the last minute or some point in the development process they changed it to slivers, and also decided for whatever reason to make those particular slivers asymmetric like allies. So yeah, but here is allies, 19 of those. Also there's something else going on here that I suppose isn't always flagged up necessarily, because there was only a few cards where this was really a thing. So it's a pretty diluted theme, and my understand it my understanding is it's something called Bloodied. It's like a nickname, or Bloodthirsty, and it was always on vampires, and it had this thing where it's like as long as an opponent has 10 or less life. You can see there's 4 cards which have that bloodied or bloodthirsty theme. With this one, actually, I should clarify that it enables, so it's an enabler for that straight away. Like instant enabler. Although it can tick it down, it's -3 ability, boom, your opponent's life total becomes 10. So theoretically it could make their life total go up, actually. Yeah, so that was a small vampire only theme in the set. And as a consequence, I felt it was only fair to talk a little bit about tribes in Zendikar. So we had vampires. There were 9 vampire cards. There were 12 cores in the set. And again, with this, it's not necessarily a theme in the set, but I just thought, as we were talking about vampires, and I did know there was a large number of cores in here, I thought it'd be useful to go for each of the colours, like through mainly what you might think about as being the main tribe from a creature type perspective. So goblins, 7 goblin cards at various rarities. And obviously the rarity, in terms of if you did decide to go down the tribal route when you're drafting, would have had a big impact in terms of what you might have drafted if you felt there was a strong theme reflected in that tribal by drafting that as a simple strategy. And you see the green ones, we've got elves. Again, we do have some commons and uncommons here. And there's merfolk in blue, although not as easy to draft probably as some of the others. There's quite a few rare merfolk when you compare against how many there are. So out of 7 merfolk, 3 of them are rare. And 8 humans just spread across the different colours. There's at least 1 in each colour. Okay. I don't really need to talk about the colour pie in Magic generally, because it was apart from the dual lands, it was a monocoloured set really, in terms of the other cards apart from the dual lands, which we'll look at. So we've got a cycle of expeditions. Each of these common enchantments bear the word expedition on them, and they gain a quest counter from a landfall ability and have an activated ability for removing 3 counters and sacrificing the expedition, and you get this nice reward for doing that expedition. So there was tinges of questing in this block in terms of this, and then later on in the block leveling up and those sort of things. So you could argue there were little bits of, like D&D already filtering into to some of the themes and accordingly certain mechanics. Right, cycle of quests. So uncommon quests. So each of these enchantments bear the word quest in its name. They gain quest counters from specific events, and certain number of counters can be removed, and the enchantment can be sacrificed for an effect. So you've got expeditions, you've got quests. But as you saw, there were, more expeditions and quests in total beyond the particular cycles that I'm looking at the moment. But you'll notice they all do reference quest counters. So we have the expeditions, you could argue, are the common quests. The uncommon are the uncommon quests here, these ones. The quests are the uncommon quests. And then we finally have the ascensions, which also rely on quest counters. So you could consider them quests as well. So the ascension quests are the rare ones. Each of these rare enchantments gain quest counters should specific events occur and another ability is enabled after a threshold of counters is reached. All of them also have ascension in the name. So quest counters across 3 rarities. On the expeditions at uncommon, on the expeditions at common, the quests at uncommon, and then the ascensions at rare. But nothing at this point in Mythic. We'll get on to Mythics later in terms of just generally how they represented in the set. Kicker. So there was a cycle of common kicker instants. They're just instants that have a kicker cost. And I mentioned about kicker earlier. So you can choose to pay an additional amount as stipulated in the rules text in addition to the casting cost. So it's in addition, it doesn't replace it. And then you get an effect that is enhanced some way by being kicked. So you can see there's the effect and then there's the enhanced effect underneath it if you kick it. Bold defense into the royal, vampires bite, burst lightning and vines of Valswood. Then there's I think they call these the strong kicker cycle. So these are at rare. And you get a big effect that comes in, that becomes a giant effect for a big colourless kicker cost. So quite a high and quite specific in most cases casting cost. You can see pretty fully invested in red for this elemental appeal. So 4 red, 3 of the colour for Conqueror's Pledge and Sadistic Sacrament, and then 2 for Right Replication, Gigantiform. I like Right of Replication. Yeah. I'm just looking to see. So what we got here? So we got token production that gets amplified if you kick it. We've got token production by copying a target creature, which gets amplified if you kick it. We've got, what would that be classed as? So you're exiling stuff into library. So basically it's a sort of combo killer, which then gets ramped up to be, not only that, but 15 cards which are exiled. So you're getting into, obviously into mill territory by that point. I mean, obviously this is a, form of mill, but I'm assuming here you'd be more using it to get rid of any bombs. Here it goes much beyond that, particularly in limited. If you're playing your opponent's playing a 40 card deck and they've already drawn 7 for their opening hand, and that leaves them with 33. So but to kick this, you're talking about what, 10 in total if you want to kick it. And as I've said, the only problem with these big spells is this was a super fast set, so you have to be a bit careful. If you're doing some sort of blue-black mill control thing, you've really got to be in control, because with fast creature decks, things can get out of control real quick. At least that was my experience of playing this as a draft format. I don't think I ever played it as sealed. I don't remember. I only remember drafting it online. There's a lot to think about in this set, actually. Lots of interesting different things as I look through that enter my mind. Landfall pump creatures. It's a cycle. They're all common, and they all gain +2/+2 as their landfall ability. There's also a piece of equipment that has the same function as the cycle, which is adventuring gear, which I haven't included here. Which is a piece of equipment as opposed to a creature. Don't know what my favourite is really here. It was a 3/3 with first strike is always really interesting. We've got, it does cost 4 to cast, but if we can landfall it, we do get a full 4/4 with flying. Okay, so on to the first of our non-basic lands, particularly our land cycles here. So these were all got to get this right. You can see here what you're getting is they enter the battlefield tapped. Ultimately, they tap for the relevant colour of mana, but you get this spell effect. So, white one is 2 life, the blue one is flying, the red one is +2/+0, and the green one is +1/+1. The black one is life loss. Now, all of these, you could argue, I suppose, these are spells that would be normally what costed around 1 mana. So they come into the battlefield tapped, but you get a free spell off the back of it. So moving on to another cycle. This was a cycle of rare lands. They each entered the battlefield tapped. Interestingly enough, taps for 1 mana of colour again, but they also have an additional ability, and each is named after a specific place on Zendikar, even though they're not legendary. So Emiria, Magosi, Agadim, Valakut and Oran Reef. But like I said, they're not legendary cards, not legendary lands. And you can see here we've got multiple different things going on. They're quite different effects. So this one cares about if you're controlling 7 or more lands, planes, sorry. You can get a target creature back from the graveyard. This one messes about with Eon counters and tied to extra turns. This one you can get a black creature back from your sorry, I'll start again. Basically, it's a sort of it's an interesting form of filtering. So you invest 2 of any colour into it, and then the amount of black you get out of it is dependent on how many black creatures you have in your graveyard. This one is another one that cares about 5 things. In this case, 5 mountains. And when it enters the battlefield, you can have Valakut, the multiple pinnacle, deal 3 damage to target creature or player. So, yeah, red burn, the thing. And then this one was +1/+1 counters on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. So a couple of these, there's scaling going on. The other 2 are like conditional effects, and then this one here is counters. So yeah. Cycle of growing allies. So each of these common creatures, so cycle of commons, have when this card or another ally comes into play under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Cycle of uncommon allies. They're just ally-based cards with ally-based abilities that are uncommon. And you can see here, if you look at here's the allied-based abilities on these. So whenever the card itself or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, then you get to do something, and so they trigger off themselves as well. And then a cycle of rare allies. So you can see again we've got cycle of common allies, a cycle of uncommon allies, and a cycle of rare allies. And these have a powerful ally ability. So this one's got an ETB. This one is activated, and it scales based on allies. This one is another ETB, ETB, ETB. Yeah, a couple of things here actually. Which is quite... So this one here, when it enters the battlefield under your control, or another ally, target player is the number of cards from his or her hand equal to the number of allies you control. You choose one of them, that player discards that card. Okay. So got blue-black ally. Yeah, blue-black ally discard. Looking at some of the cards we've seen already. You could get some... Yeah, serious card advantage going on in a blue-black deck here. I'm going to be interested to see how they played out with the intro decks. What they did there. Okay, a cycle of these refuge lands. So 5 lands are uncommon. They come into the battlefield tapped. And they tap for one of the 2 allied colours. So dual lands at uncommon, they do come into play tapped, but you do gain 1 life, and they all do that. All allied colours. But we also had a cycle of rare enemy coloured fetch lands. So for these, you tap them, pay 1 life, you sack them, and then you go search out for a mountain or a plains card, and they come into play ready to go. But they are enemy colours. So, there was fixing. Statistically, you're more likely to maybe see the allied colour fixing because they were uncommon. But, if you manage to pull one of these, then there's some enemy colour fixing there as well. Okay. Yeah, there was actually a mega cycle of Planeswalkers going on. So we had 3 out of the 5 here. We've got Sorin Markov, Chandra Blaze and Nissa Ravine. And then the 2 others, which were in the other sets, which again, that's why it's a mega cycle, because it spreads across multiple sets in the block. Mega cycle is multiple sets in the block. And mega cycle is multiple across sets, including ones outside of the block. So this is just a mega cycle. So we had Gideon Jura, which we'll see when we get to Rise of the Eldrazi, and the infamous Jace the Mind Sculptor when we get to Worldwake. Also, interestingly, shows you how my, often your remembering this gets put out of whack by the order in which you open them. And what I mean by that is there was Vampire Hexmage in this set. And the set came out before Jace. So for some bizarre reason, I thought it was around the other way around. I thought Vampire Hexmage came out afterwards, but it was there before. Oh, there was one thing I didn't mention, because I normally like to mention these. I can see if I can find this on the fly now. So we did have a match pair. Oh, I know why I didn't mention it, because only half of the match pair was here. Let me just try and find it anyway. So was it Threader, I think, in the title? Yeah, so Cliff Threader was one half of what they call these mega match pairs. Anyway, Cliff Threader is in Zendikar, and then the other one. Seeing as I'm nearly there, why not? Let me try this. I think it's WWK, isn't it? I haven't got this prepped up yet, so yeah, there you go. So one from Zendikar, one from Worldwake. One had Mountain Walk, one had Swamp Walk. They were both 2-1 for 1 and a white. Yeah, cool. Yes. Now the most important thing here. The basics. So you can see for each one, we've got regular ones, and then we've got full art. Now you can see here the full art is quite different. I mean, there are echoes in it, but it's quite different from the non-full artwork. So it's not a question of just zooming in or zooming out. Although thematically you can see similar things. We've got these hedrons going on. I'm going to spot the hedron here. I don't know if I see it anywhere there. It's easier on these ones. It's interesting, it's another world that looks very weird and unstable, which is interesting considering we've come out of shards. And, different plane obviously, but yeah. Interesting in that, 2 worlds that look unusual for various reasons or seem unstable. And I just wanted to show you, I know we've seen them already, but there's the complete, 20 20 non-basics. So you've got these ones that, the spell lands, or whatever you want to call them, at common. We've got the these other sort of rare spell lands at the higher, rare. Some of which are conditional. And then we've got dual lands at uncommon and dual lands at rare. But I just wanted to just bring this up as a total, so you can see there's no mythic lands, no mythic rare lands in this set. Just 3 Planeswalkers in the set, which are part of that mega cycle I'd mentioned across the block. 4 legendaries. Don't know how easy this is to spot. You can see here that, let's show you. So it looks like that one hasn't been reprinted. Yeah, so I don't know if any of these have actually been reprinted in what I call a regular set. It's either special sets or not at all. Yeah. And these are all at Mythic. Make a mental note of this fella. So, talking about mythics, funnily enough, 15 mythics in the set. So, you can see here we've got 2 in white, 2 in blue, 3 in black, 3 in red, 3 in green. So it would appear the ones where they're 3, each one of those there's 3 because one of them is a Planeswalker. So the ones that didn't have a Planeswalker just have 2 mythics per colour. And then we've got Zeldrassi Monument and Eternity Vessel. I actually was really lucky and pulled a foil of these. I'll have to see if I can find it when I do the artwork. See if I can find it. I may have even pulled it from a deck builder's toolkit, which might mean it's in my EDH toolkit, but it's quite possible I've also got it in a deck. I'm trying to think actually whether there was some sliver deck or something like I built where I put this in. Yeah, anyway, I'm sure I'll find it, hopefully. Yep, so 15 mythics. So 112 creatures with all manner of different abilities on them. And of course, Felidar Sovereign is our alternate win condition. I've got World Queller in here as well. Yeah, some pretty interesting larger creatures in this actually. Which again is, don't know how well they pan out in draft. In terms of how it works out with the casting cost. There's our Vampire Hex-Mage. Of course, Goblin Guide, yeah, I remember this. Yeah, like, you got these like low CMC. So you know, like these 1 CMC creatures. So it's interesting to try and get a feel for this. You notice there were like 1 or 2 CMC cards which wanted you to go into like mono black or mono red or mono green or whatever. So yeah, that was a thing. So creature wise, you know, we've got 62 cards that are less than 4 CMC. Let me just cut that and just compare that. So out of our creatures, 112. So yeah, round about half are 3 CMC or less. On the flip side, so 4 CMC or more. You can sort of see what might be going on here. So it is almost as if a lot of these higher CMC cards, there's almost other things that need to happen before you get the full value. Or they have, you know, their higher CMC versus lower power toughness is compensated some way by some sort of ability which may or may not be activated. But just an interesting thing to note there going on. Because again, something I just reminded myself of as we're going through this, and this is part of the fun of the set musings. Is the whole point is as I muse over this, I start to think, oh yeah, that was also a bit of a thing at the time. So 17 enchantments, including Journey to Nowhere. When Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile a target card. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And you saw already how quite a few of these were either quests, expeditions, or ascensions. Because there are 15 of those that fall into that category. So out of that, we've just got Journey to Nowhere and Electropotence as being the only ones, the only enchantments that aren't either ascension, a quest, or a expedition. So 9 auras that do a variety of aura type things. You can see even on these we got a kicker on this one. Got quite a bit of pump going on here, actually. It's always interesting to see how the aura enchantments might play into the theme. I'm just looking to see, there doesn't seem to be any land enchantment in. Oh, there we go. Normally there's always one. So Spreading Seas. So I always tend to look for it in green, and I completely forgot that Spreading Seas was in the set. Only ever printed in Zendikar. It's nearly $4 actually. You can see here. So 5 just pure artifacts. Again, interesting to see what you might get here. So we've got artifact card draw off of sacrificing a creature. Interestingly, you don't lose the artifact, you just lose the creature. We've got this Zeldrassi Monument. Interesting pump artifact, but you have to keep fed. We've got Eternity Vessel, which allows you to do life total shenanigans. Expedition map, so that's our land tutoring artifact that you often see in a set. And then we've got Colony Gem, which I can never say properly, probably, which is our set mana rock, which was at, funnily enough, at uncommon. It's interesting there aren't multiple ones here, although I suppose we have all the non-basic lands for fixing, and most of the time I suppose people are going to want to go with monocolour builds to some degree, like splashing another colour. So yeah, some equipment. There wasn't an equipment theme. So you can see there's one with Landfall on it. And we've got some conditional equipment here as well. And a piece of equipment also allows you to do ramp. Two artifact creatures, Stonework Puma and Hedron Scrambler. And I wanted to just re-flag this up. So in the case of instants, you could argue there were two sorts of instants. There were 22 regular instants, and then there were 14 traps that were instants. So this is just all of the instants that aren't traps, and this is all the instants that are traps. And you can see with the traps, you've got this condition attached to them, or some twist going on here. So the trap cards generally have an alternative cost if a specific event happens, like, you know, opponent doing something. And then there's also cards that represent sort of small quests. Not instants, but you know, in relation. So there was this sort of relationship going on between some of the smaller quests, I suppose you could argue, and these instants, not necessarily mechanically, but thematically. So yeah, it's like thematically complementing one another. So yeah, just looking at the sort of things that you might get. I don't seem to see any modality necessarily going on here. Just the usual things to expect at instant. What about the regular ones? So we got hosing, pumping, life gain, counter. Yeah. Oh, that one searches for a trap card. -2/-2, destruction. There's our direct damage. So we got a number of different types of damage here. There's our asymmetric pump that we often see at instant speed for combat tricks. Prevention of damage prevention. Ah, yes, of course, Harrow was in here. Fog effect, artifact and enchantment destruction. Pump based on the number of forests, and then at sorcery speed, do we have mass removal? I don't know if we do. Oh, so I clicked on that accidentally. We do, yeah. So I clicked back on the instant there by mistake. So, yeah. I thought I knew Day of Judgment was in here. I just clicked on the wrong tab. So 19 sorceries. 2 and 2 white. Destroy all creatures. Oh, here's our major kicker spell. Life gain. Pump. Oh, yeah. So, we'll see here those, pretty dramatic kicker effects for sorceries. Discard. Okay, it's interesting. Using a vampire as a resource, and then for your kicker. Okay. It's pretty aggressive control cards here, actually, and life drain. And land destruction. Discard. What's our removal sorcery? Our marsh casualties. And yeah, conditional destruction. Oh, this thing, which we saw earlier. Artifact of land destruction in red. What sort of sorcery damage have we got? Oh, of course, a mutiny card. Mark a mutiny. Where you gain control until end of turn. Get a little bit extra on that one. Oh, damage conditional on mountains. And then, so top deck tutoring. So you can see here as well, I mentioned there is a general land theme, so you probably spotted there's a number of spells, various spells where the land is used a condition, or the type of land is used a condition for the spell's effect. So again, meshing in with just a general land theme beyond the obvious landfall theme. Okay, so back to this as a whole. I wanted to just look and see. I think there's only one alternate win that just came up because of the Wind Rider is in it. Yeah, so one alternate win condition. Right, expensive cards. So we've got the cycle of enemy colour fetchlands. Most expensive one clocking in around $30. It's been reprinted several times now, including various alternate arts in Modern Horizons, including this quite nice one with the alternate borders, which is the most expensive one. There was also some Secret Lair ones and some Zendikar Rising expeditions and some Zendikar expeditions as well. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to see these all bubble to the surface. So there's Misty Rainforest. Then we got Blood Chief Ascension sneaking in between them. It's $23, around about 24. Oh, Valakut, of course, which is not one of the fetchlands, but certainly did some interesting things in Mono Red. Mind Break traps, 20. So if an opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you may pay 0 rather than play. Exile India number of target spells. Okay, fair enough. Verdant Catacombs, Marsh Flats. So yeah, definitely these, rare lands generally, both cycles come into the top price-wise. And a number of traps. So I don't think I mentioned this as well, with this sort of 0 casting cost. It's tied into some of the traps. There we go. Another rare. This is one of the fetch lands. Oracle of Moldar, of course. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. So it was in Jumpstart, but that's it. Yep, another rare land. So first, I think Planeswalker we've seen so far from this set in the price list. So this was a mythic. Only printed in Zendikar. I think that's the first. Is that the first mythic? Oh no, Mind Break Trap was a mythic. Yeah. So as we go down to our $10 threshold, that's the second one. Of course, I forgot that searched out for Nissa's Chosen. Oh, here's Zeldrassi Monument. $12. How much is the foil version? Just out of curiosity. Actually, no, I won't bother looking. Trying to remember now. Oh, my brain's just gone blank. Anyway, so we go back. Does that sometimes. So where do we get to here? We got to here. Okay, Obnixilis 11, Bloodcast, yeah, that was in here. We looked at that earlier. 11, Zorin, Luminarch, just getting close to 10. Calatus. So all of the those legendary creatures look like they're, well, most of them we haven't seen our friend the octopus yet, I don't think. The Carl. Royal Elemental, we just dropped below the $10 threshold. So in terms of the EDH ranking order, so I don't think there's any surprise there. It's going to be mostly the more popular fetch lands. In fact, yeah, all 5 of them. Then we've got our Harrow, Expedition Map, Rampaging Balos, Lotus Cobra, Beastmaster, and then utility land, however you want to think of them, Oracle, Right of Replication, Spell Pierce, yeah. Vampire Nighthawk, of course, that was in the sets, yeah. Myriad, Dayad, yeah, okay. So, and Hellkite Charger, wow. Yeah, this was a cool set. Very cool indeed. So that raises a question. Well, we're thinking about the themes here. was curious how many things actually had lifelink mentioned in them. Yeah, a bit too high. So I'm just seeing if blue-white lifelink was a thing. So that's the set in terms of intro decks, intro packs. So very much keeping in with the themes broadly of the set, although you know, you can see they switch between. So this one is a core tribal with equipment. So mono white. Looks like they put in the mono white utility land in there. Then we've got so this is actually a 2-color deck. So we've got what's that? Red, blue, some sort of pump. So direct damage. Okay, so we're using direct damage spells to decimate your opponent's army. But they're also I was just wondering what blue creatures, if any, they'd chosen. So where's our blue? Is that, oh right, replication, sleep, and spire barrage. So sleep, again with these, you'll notice that they've got stuff coming in from the core set as well in these decks. So vampire deck, mono black vampire deck with the black utility land. Pumped up one, what land did that? Oh, that had a terramorphic expanse from the core set. Okay. Adventurers, red-green allies. With a terramorphic expanse. And then our landfall, our green-blue landfall. So I'd be interested, anybody that was playing around this time, how much luck did you have getting 2-color builds to work, particularly in draft? Or did you find that you were tending to go with sort of monocolor fast decks? I would be interesting if anybody that played at that time. Because like I said, I did it retrospectively on MTGO and found that a lot of people were playing like super fast monocolor builds. But I would be curious at the time what the perceived wisdom was around the time the set was released and what sort of things people tended to go with in terms of the amount of colours they were playing. I assume that anything over 2 colours wasn't attempted regularly, but who knows. And there's that little tab on Priceless Treasures. This is a list of what's been reported. So these were the ones, if you remember, I mentioned that appeared in boosters randomly in where the basic land would normally be. So yeah, power 9. And then in terms of our Commander Durdle episode, the pool that I decided to go with, I managed after a few rolls of the dice to get a Lorthos, well actually to just get a legendary creature, because there's a few in here, so it takes a few attempts on MTGen to find a pool that where I could potentially get a Planeswalker, not Planeswalker, a legendary creature. And first time I did it, it was Lorthos, so we'll go with a Lorthos deck. I don't quite know how many cards we'll be able to include from this pool in blue, but I'll have a go. I'm sure there's some utility here. Oh, we've got to cancel, so yeah, we'll have a cancel in there. But obviously I just need enough to basically be able to trigger the architect's algorithm to start offering up suggestions. I mean, I could have I could have looked at the other rares, I suppose. I don't have to always necessarily pick a legendary creature, but it is nice to just do a build around of legendaries, particularly ones that aren't always commonly built around. But there's a number of rares in here which would have been interesting build around rares as well, including the Felidar Sovereign, like a mono white life gain deck. I suppose I could equip up Lorthos with a trusty machete. Or a blazing torch, maybe. It's my... maybe I need to sideboard that for dealing with vampire or zombie tribal. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It was certainly very enjoyable looking through these cards and looking at all the different themes and various other things that basically came to the fore as we went through. Stuff that I hadn't thought about talking in the set, but just really bubbled to the surface as I went through some of the cycles and looking at the cards generally. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.